Hey, it's Les from the TV Dudes. This week, I got to chat with actor and writer Adam Tsekhman. You probably know him as Time Corps bureaucrat Gary Green on the CW's Legends of Tomorrow. But you may also know him from the TV series Six or the motion picture Dragged Across Concrete. We had a great chat about how he got from Wharton finance to the DC universe, as well as what he likes to bring to his own creative projects. Hope you enjoy.
Hey, Les. How's it going?
Going great. Hopefully you're having a great day too. Thanks so much for taking time today. I really appreciate it.
A pleasure. Pleasure to be here, chatting.
So I've loved Legends of Tomorrow. I was a comic book nerd as a kid, and it is a Saturday morning cartoon live action in the best possible sense for me. One of my favorite additions has been the Time Corps and your role as Gary Green. How would you describe Gary and his part in that world?
Well, Gary is an intelligent, eager, excitable, lovable, wanting and desiring to help in every way he can, although he's limited by the fact that he's not a superhero, sadly.
And I know you grew up in Canada, and then took the obviously traditional actor's path through Wharton finance.
Exactly, yeah, very traditional. I followed a long line of other fellow Wharton actor grads.
When you first got into acting, I had read in your bio that you had a part in a Neil Simon play, but walk me through. I mean, the only thing I think I knew about West Philly when I went off to college was that the Fresh Prince didn't live there anymore. So what was it like to be an undergrad and in finance classes and get on that stage and find that bug for acting?
Yeah, I mean, like I can't speak poorly about finance because I enjoyed it. I thought it was intellectually stimulating and fun until I started doing acting, and then it was like incredible. I mean, the best way I can describe it is it's like very therapeutic. If I ever felt like nauseated or a headache or sick or tired, whatever, any sort of negative biological feeling, it would completely disappear being on stage. It was incredible. It was like, it almost has the effect of some kind of drug. Like it's amazing. So, thankfully that feeling hasn't dissipated, and it's just such a pleasure to be either on stage or in front of the camera. I mean, it's the effect is similar. So even though I enjoyed studying finance, it just didn't have that same effect.
just wasn't as cathartic to be in those classes.
Totally.
I wanted to ask about stage versus camera, because I know you went on to do your MFA at Columbia, and not to take away from the value of taking acting classes and studying craft, but what was the decision was there a decision to just not move to LA and just try to start this thing, or to go off and do more school for it?
You mean before Columbia?
Yes, yeah.
It was, I felt, I sort of, right after graduating, I spent a year in Toronto, kind of becoming acquainted with the world of acting, and realized like I just didn't know anything. And I felt like I needed to be educated. And it was kind of hilarious coming into Columbia because, the majority of students had all gotten their BFAs. They've already been studying theater. And I was like a complete moron. I was just, and having no shame about asking the stupid questions, I mean, not questions like who's Shakespeare, but, like let's say level 2 above that. But, there were, and I felt as though other people in the class may have shared those same questions, but almost felt embarrassed to ask because they had been educated in theater already. But in the end, it wasn't it's kind of like the education. It's hard to say how the education helped me other than the fact that it's somewhere in there. I'm not specifically like, as I get in front of the camera to play Gary Green, I'm not thinking, okay, when in season 2, in year 2 of Columbia, when we learned about Bertolt Brecht and his theater of alienation, I can, like tap into that for this, that doesn't play a part, but it was, I think it's important to learn about the history of theater and to do theater for every actor.
Well, and that's something I hear from a lot of actors is that so much of the job is staying busy between jobs and making sure that you stay focused and you go to auditions. And part of that can be taking classes and making sure that you stay on it like that. When you did get into television roles from stage, was that a big shift? Do you feel like you were ready for the business side of it?
It's just such a long process, like, at least for me. I think for most actors, there's this sense that, like, oh, that person came out of nowhere, and it's just not ever the case.
That's almost never true, yeah.
Right, yeah. So you sort of learn a little bit at a time. The first opportunity you'll get is, very daunting, and it's not actually daunting, but it's just the nerves. You sort of, oh my God, I better not fuck up because the camera's on me. But it's sort of, as the years pass, you become more relaxed about that. As for the grind, even to get to the level of the grind where you're like auditioning, even to get to the point where you have like semi-consistent auditions takes forever, So I kept busy, a few years in with writing, which I'm still doing, and creating my own content.
I wanted to ask about, I got to watch on Vimeo, the pilot for Americanistan is on there. And so yeah. I wanted to ask, are you still developing that or what writing projects are you going on now?
So we have some fresh sort of momentum on that project because one of the lead actors of the show, when we initially shot it, and we shot it kind of like a pilot presentation, we sort of raised money ourselves and kind of did it ourselves. And our director, his family's from Lebanon and his dad lives in Kuwait. So he went to visit his dad in Kuwait City and just like shot B-roll of Kuwait City, which just, is in the middle of the desert and has some great sort of, but one of the leads his name is Mina Masood, and he's a fabulous actor, and he was cast to play Aladdin. So he's going to be in Disney's Aladdin, playing Aladdin next year, and he's, very eager to still do Americanistan. So we're sort of, have been reinvigorated, and I've actually been working the last month with my writing partner, sort of bringing before you pitch a show. I mean, at least in our experience, because I haven't sold anything as a writer. We have to have sort of the first 5 seasons of the show mapped out.
Yeah.
So just kind of like
best case scenario, are you ready for success? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, we love this idea. Oh, this pilot is fun. But, like, where is this show going to go? And so it's been really fun sort of working through that on kind of a macro level. What could happen in a fictional Middle Eastern country mired in conflict over the course of 5 seasons? And how do we keep it funny? And how do we keep all these characters engaged and interesting and growing and developing, So it's going well, and I'm excited about the potential for it, despite the fact that it's kind of, it's a bit of a challenge because we are kind of poking fun at very serious and tragic things.
I feel like one of the neat things about your role on Legends is that Gary's now been part of the show for long enough that I feel like I've seen more of your character, that I have seen you deepen and grow. Do you feel like that's informed your writing of trying to extrapolate out stuff on your own writing?
Oh, that's interesting. I think so. I don't know if it's conscious. Maybe I should be thinking about that more. That's a great question. But yeah, to a certain extent, or even from the perspective of like, watching how the show has, from the writer's perspective, has changed from season 3 to season 4. I mean, it's really incredible how they sort of, in a way, they introduced Constantine and brought this whole new sort of realm into the show. And it's incredible. I mean, the way they've grown it is fantastic. So that's kind of inspirational. Like you can literally approach a new season not having any clue where it's going to go because you've sort of introduced something that's never been there before.
Yeah, this new catalyst.
Yeah, exactly.
Were you a nerdy comic book kid? Did anything on Legends particularly geek you out?
So I wasn't really a comic book kid. I would say I was nerdy, but I was more like, I did well in school, but I didn't, I was like into sports, kind of like, I guess skirting the line between nerdy and jockey. I certainly wasn't jockey because I wasn't like, killing it in any sport, but yeah, I was kind of video games and sports more than comic books.
Did you have any particular movie role or TV role that when you got into acting, you thought, man, if they remake that, I should be, Bond or Superman or...
Oh, that's interesting. Well, I would say on stage, I always loved the MC in Cabaret.
Mm-hmm.
You know that role?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I sort of thought that was a really fun role, but I've always veered towards comedy. Like I'm, just like for me, the stuff that Sacha Baron Cohen does is just like that. That's the dream. To work with him or with Larry David. That's kind of I'm sort of always drawn more to the comedy side of things. Bond, I mean, that would be cool, but I almost can't envision it unless it's kind of a different take.
When I watched your drama reel versus your comedy reel, I watched your drama reel first, and about halfway through it, I started wondering if your accent as Gary was an accent, and how you actually talked. Because so many of your roles, I know for one role you learned Yiddish, and then for several roles you just have an accent. In your own writing, is that something you're conscious of whether you're playing to stereotype or playing against them?
Well, so I guess maybe I should be more concerned about stereotype, but I'm really not. I just feel like even though I heard advice early on, it's like typecast still has the word cast in it. It's still a job, and
yeah.
And the fact is, like in the past, and even in the future, getting roles with an accent, it's just easier to get those roles. There's just less competition. The world of the showbiz is just so full of extremely talented people. And often it's a numbers game. So, thankfully my parents my whole family are immigrants. They all came from the Soviet Union, so I can speak Russian, and the Russian accent is like a part of me. And, I spent a lot of time in Israel and the Middle East, and, so having those tools sort of just opens up more opportunities for me. And in terms of writing, yeah, I guess we have written several characters that do have accents. And I think part of that is because I'm drawn from a writing perspective to characters that are in situations where they are uncomfortable. I just like fish out of water scenarios. And often that comes with either, Americans or Canadians, whatever, in foreign lands or foreigners in the West. Does that play to stereotypes? To a certain extent, maybe. but not to the point that it's, I think it's fun to take a stereotype and put it on its head.
Yeah. Yeah. In watching Americanistan, there's playing with and playing to. I felt like the story called for and got some really great laughs out of it.
Well, thank you very much.
As a kid, my grandmother and grandfather would argue in Yiddish, and I always thought it was hysterical that they didn't think we knew it was an argument because it was in a different language. And so when I saw that you had to learn Yiddish for a role, I was like, wow, I don't think I've heard anybody speak that in forever.
That's really funny. Yeah, I had the same experience as you growing up. Like my grandparents, they would speak English or Russian, and everybody would understand. And then if they spoke Yiddish, that would like eliminate their grandchildren from the mix. So just my parents, and they would understand. And then they would speak Romanian, would be like the ultimate secret language that nobody understood except the two of them.
That's great. Thank you so much for taking out the time to talk to me today. I really appreciate it.
No, it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely enjoyed seeing Gary's character grow on Legends, and I can't wait to see what you've got to come in season 4. Without spoiling anything, was there anything particularly fun or crazy that you got to do at your day job for season 4?
Yeah, I got to work with a unicorn. So yeah, that was fun. And they actually, spoiler alert, unicorns are real, and they got one. So, don't ever say that Hollywood can't make magic real. They actually did get a real unicorn. So that's really exciting.
I assume you're just banking these stories away for a Wharton alumni dinner sometime.
Yeah,
you can just bust out the most interesting anecdotes.
Absolutely.
Thanks again, man. I really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your day, okay?
It was a real pleasure. Thanks, you too. Take care.
Bye.
The TV Dudes is an independently run podcast and a member of the Electric Sweater Podcast Network. We are exclusively listener-supported. If you'd like to help us out, go to patreon.com/TVDudes. You can like us on Facebook and Twitter @TV Dudes. All the music for our show is by our friend and original TV Dude, Gregory J. Amani Smith. To find out more about us, go to thetvdudes.com and electricsweater.com. I'm Grant Davis. Thanks for listening.